Imagine an entire town with guns, horses, and cars chasing after 4 bank robbers for a bounty of $5,000. And the catch is, they only get paid if they kill the robbers, not if they catch them alive. Our story begins on December 23rd, 1927, when Marshall Ratliff decided to rob a bank. But Marshall had a problem. Just a year earlier, he and his brother had robbed a different bank and were arrested and sentenced to 18 years in prison. But their mom had paid a bribe to the governor and had gotten them out. So after just serving 18 months, they had walked out as free men. So now Marshall is out and he's broke again. And he wants to hit a national bank in the town of Cisco, Texas. Since Marshall is a popular guy, if he walks into a bank, people are going to recognize his face immediately. He needs a disguise. And since it's just 2 days before Christmas, he comes up with a brilliant idea. He puts on a red suit, a fake white beard, and a pillow in his shirt. He decides to rob the bank dressed as Santa Claus. Aside from Marshall, there were 3 others: Henry Helms and Robert Hill, 2 criminals with a history of violence. The 4th man was Louis Davis, a quiet family man who really needed some cash to support his family. On the day of the robbery, Marshall puts on a suit and walks down the main street. And immediately it works too well. Kids see him and they go crazy and they start following him. So you have this bank robber dressed as Santa Claus leading a parade of happy children right up to the bank door. He walks inside and the kids follow him in, and the people inside greet him and smile at him. But then Marshall pulls out a gun. Helms, Hill, and Davis bust in with their guns, and Marshall screams, "Hands up!" The customers panic, and Marshall starts frantically shoving stacks of cash into his Santa sack. They manage to grab the $12,400 in cash and $150,000 in securities. That was an insane lot of money back then. But while this is happening, a woman in the bank sees what's going on and she quietly slips out of the back door. She runs to the police station and yells, "Santa Claus is robbing the bank." And then the police chief, he knows exactly what to do. Now remember that $5,000 reward I mentioned? Well, here is why that existed. You see, back then, bank robberies in Texas were completely out of control. It was like a total epidemic, with banks getting hit constantly, sometimes multiple times a day. And the banks were sick of it. So the Texas Bankers Association decided they weren't going to play nice anymore. They put out a bounty of $5,000 for any bank robber killed during a crime. Not captured, killed. So when the alarm goes out, it's not just the police who show up. Every guy in the town grabs a gun. And this is Texas in the 1920s, so everyone has a gun. Suddenly, the bank is surrounded by hundreds of armed citizens. You've got shopkeepers, farmers, random guys walking down the street. They all want that $5,000. So Marshall and his friends, they are getting ready to leave the bank, but Robert Hill sees a shadow move near the window. And he gets spooked. So he decides to fire a shot through the glass, but this backfires immediately. Instead of scaring them off, that one shot acts like a starting pistol. The whole town opens fire on them. It is a war zone. Bullets are flying everywhere. It is total chaos. Marshall and his crew realize they're trapped. So they do something really messed up. They grab 2 little girls and use them as human shields to get to their getaway car. They get in the car, but the town keeps shooting. The car is getting riddled with bullets. The tires are shot out. The robbers are getting hit. Marshall gets shot in the jaw. Louis Davis, the family man, takes the worst of it. He gets critically shot in the gut. They manage to drive away on flat tires, but then they realize they have a much bigger problem. They are running out of gas because apparently in all their genius planning, they totally forgot to fill up the tank before the robbery. They're desperate and they see a kid driving a fancy car. So they carjack him. They drag their dying friend Davis and the money bags into the new car. But it won't start. The kid had quietly taken away the keys. So with bullets flying everywhere, they panic. So they scramble back to their old car and speed off. In the chaos, they just don't leave Davis behind. They forgot the stolen money too. This would have made it the largest Texas bank heist to that day had they not left it all behind in confusion. Along with the money, they left their dying friend Davis. So the 3 robbers and their hostages speed into a pasture, smashing through cactus and thick brush. But eventually the growth gets so heavy that their car just can't make it. So they ditch the bullet-riddled car and the hostages right in the middle of nowhere and take off on foot. So now the sheriff calls in the cavalry. This triggers the biggest manhunt in Texas history. I'm talking airplanes, trackers, and hundreds of angry people hunting down the robbers. Meanwhile, Davis, the guy they left behind, dies on Christmas Day. It was his first crime ever and it was his last. But for the other three, it gets wilder. On Christmas night, they carjack a young guy named Carl Wiley. But as they speed off, Carl's dad spots them. He grabs a shotgun and shoots at the car to stop them. He misses the robbers and accidentally shoots his own son. Eventually, the robbers let him go and steal another car. But then things get even worse. A massive winter storm hits, a blue norther with freezing sleet and rain. They try to cross a river to escape, but they get ambushed by a sheriff and his men. A huge shootout happens right there in the river bottoms. Marshall gets shot again, this time severely, and he collapses and gets captured. Marshall was reportedly a walking arsenal bearing no fewer than 6 gunshot wounds and 6 pistols when captured. Santa had been caught. Helms and Hill managed to limp away into the freezing woods, but the cops eventually find them. They're beat up, starving, and full of bullet holes, and they get arrested. Henry Helms, the one with criminal record, goes to trial and is sentenced to death. Henry tries to pull a fast one. He starts acting completely insane, hoping to get sent to an asylum instead. But the cops and the doctors, they aren't buying it. They bust him faking it pretty much immediately. So his little act fails and he's sentenced to death. He's eventually executed in the electric chair. That leaves Marshall and Hill. Marshall goes to trial and obviously he gets sentenced to death. But Marshall, he's a con man, right? He doesn't want to die. So he also starts pretending to be insane. He starts acting like he's paralyzed. He's foaming at the mouth. His mom even comes to the jail and sits with him, feeding him like a baby. And it is working. The judge is actually considering declaring him insane, which would save him from the electric chair. But the people of Cisco are furious. They know he's faking it. And then Marshall makes a huge mistake. While he's in his cell acting paralyzed, the jailer, the guy everyone loved named Uncle Tom, comes in to check on him. Suddenly, Marshall jumps up, grabs a hidden gun, and he shoots Uncle Tom and kills him to try and escape. But the other deputies catch him and beat him down. When the town hears that Santa Claus killed Uncle Tom, they snap. A mob of thousands of people gathers outside the jail. They aren't waiting for the law anymore. They storm the jail. They break down the doors. They drag Marshall out of his cell and through the streets to a telephone pole. They tie a rope around his neck and pull him up. And so the man who robbed a bank dressed as Santa Claus is lynched by the town. And that leaves just one man, Robert Hill. The jury felt bad for Robert because he was an orphan boy raised in a reform school, calling him the boy who never stood a chance. But they still slapped him with a 99-year sentence. Now, Robert promised the judge he'd be a good prisoner, but he was totally lying. He breaks out not once, not twice, but 3 times. One time, he kidnaps 2 college students and forces them to drive him to Houston. Another time, he crawls through a massive 80-foot tunnel dug under the prison kitchen and makes a run for the Mexican border, staying free for 18 months before they catch him again. In 1945, he gets paroled, probably because they needed men for the war effort. And instead of going back to crime, he actually becomes a model citizen. He gets married, joins a church, and lives a quiet life until he dies in the 1990s. So against all odds, the orphan who never stood a chance becomes the only one to make it out alive.